Well, greetings and salutations, everyone. I hope everyone is still doing well, and welcome to this bonus upload. Before we jump into it, a couple links. As many of you know, I rely on Patreon, PayPal, channel membership, and the merch to help the channel to continue to grow and go. Links to Patreon, PayPal, and channel membership is in the description below. Merch displayed directly under the video. Also, Dogman Frightening Encounters, Volume 1 through 3, the audiobook versions. They were written and researched by Tom Lyons, narrated and produced by me, Jeff Nadolny. Those audiobooks are available on Audible, Amazon, and iTunes, links to which are also in the description as well. And finally, last but definitely not least, if you'd really like to help support the channel to continue to grow and go, simply subscribe. It doesn't cost a cent. Click the like button, takes half a second. If you don't want to miss out on any of the informative uploads I put out daily, click that bell icon, and folks, please leave a comment. Why? Well, because all of these things really do help the channel to continue to grow and go. And yes, folks, they definitely do matter. Now, everyone, I have taken far too much of your time. Let's jump into today's bonus, shall we? Today's first experience. Our experience happened because of right place and right time. Even our tree stands were set in place. This allowed us to get in quietly. It was only 2 or 3 minutes as I was ranging from different objects when I saw him sitting with his back against a tree in the last moments of the ray of sun before it had set. My overexcitement as I whispered loudly to my daughter, all the while not taking my eyes off of him. My youngest daughter was in the same tree as I was, facing north, and I was facing east. So when I got her attention, he immediately looked at us, then stood up. He never used his hands to help himself get up. Rather, he effortlessly stood and stepped behind the tree he had been sitting against. We could then see his hands on either side, and he kept peeking around the tree. He had at least one eye on us the entire time, and on several occasions he poked his entire head around. He was slow but deliberate. While I was keeping my eye on him and my daughter had my rangefinder, I was feeling behind me to get my phone out of my pack. Although it seemed like an eternity, it was probably less than a minute before he walked straight away, keeping the tree he was behind between us. We could hear him going down the hill, then it went quiet. In all my years, people on occasion would ask me what I thought about them or if I thought Bigfoot exist. My response was, there's a lot of country that nobody ever gets into, even hunters. Most get a few hundred yards away from their vehicles or road hunt. Even if they get deep into the back country, there are millions upon millions of acres of big canyons, trees sometimes so thick for miles it's hard to get through. I've known elk to be on one side of the hill, and after glassing for hours, do you finally see him. Some herds are 40 to 100 plus elk, and they just disappear and blend in. Now you take a small group of 3 to 6 or so individuals that come out in low light or dark to feed, travel, water, and the odds of seeing one goes down dramatically. A black bear has a range of 10 to 26 miles. A mountain lion ranges 25 to 800 square miles. The toms range the most, 800 plus square miles of the canyon's thick brush, off the beaten path where few or nobody goes. The odds of seeing one, remember, you have to be looking in the dark, is slim to none. Will I or my kids ever encounter another? Most likely not. I think their range is at least as big or bigger than a mountain lion because you have 4 to 6 or so mouths to feed. If it's like a tom mountain lion, that's 29 times 29 equals 841 square miles. If they need double that, it's 40 times 40, 600 square miles. If they are on constant move, following good food source as they move a mile or so each night, and they can go zigzagging through the thickest and most remote country in the dark, if you had that group that was next to your territory on opposite side, the two groups could be 80 miles apart. That's a huge amount of territory. Even if you cut that in half to the size of a tom mountain lion, that's still a huge area. Then it's almost impossible for an average person to see. Sasquatch. I can tell you we saw more than one the following day. We saw a younger looking female with an infant no more than 800 yards from the night before. Were beautiful, fit, and moved effortlessly as they walked. The hair was clean like a bear. The hair was reddish brown, 4 to 6 inches, the female, and the young were jet black, 4 to 6 inches long, thick, but not thick like a bear, as you could see the skin through the hair, and there were parts that were rubbed from probably walking. On the other hand, because we know so little about them, it's now constantly on my mind. I can't sleep at night out in the mountains anymore. I just lie there and listen. My kids, they are just as uneasy. So that part of me wishes I had never seen one. So you say you want to see one of these creatures. I'd approach it like you were hunting, say, elk or deer. The one thing they need is water and a decent amount of clean water. It doesn't need to be clean as in clear, but not stagnant. Next would be cover, like thick trees in a deep, steep canyon or rocky ledge or cave. They will have to feel absolutely safe and have multiple escape routes. Within that, there needs to be a good food source. Animals like moose, elk, deer, bear can grow to very big. So, if there are enough food sources to allow these animals to get big, there are plenty of food sources to choose from to meet their needs. Once you narrow that down, get on Google Earth. Let the satellite do the walking so you're not wasting time in less than ideal areas. Once you have narrowed that in, then go looking for evidence, boots on the ground. Be prepared to walk in far enough where there are no roads or trails aside from animal tracks. They are flesh and blood mammals that leave behind evidence like footprints, ground nests, etc. I think much by like gorillas. I've studied gorillas as much or more than these things because when I listen to encounters, there seems to be some, not all, but some similarities. Tree structures, I believe they use trees to communicate, just like elk, deer, moose, and bear, mountain lions also, who use them in several ways, from rubbing scent glands, raking their antlers, rubs and scrapes. I think saying every tree that has an X or a tree break is done by them is looking for the wrong evidence. Do they do those things? Most likely, just not every single one. I think once you start to find evidence, let them come and find you. I believe they are as curious about us as we them. Be just inside a tree line at sunset, stay there in the dark, moonless, or just a small moonlight. I'd say you want them to feel like you can't see them. It's their defense mechanism. Stay out of sight. If it's dark, they will most likely feel more confident to get closer. I think before you see the slightest hint of daybreak, they will have already slipped into their daybeds with sentinels. Almost like monkeys and great apes have sentinels. I think these creatures do as well. Mind you, this is just my theory. I don't know for sure on any of these things, and like I said, I do know they are flesh and blood. They don't teleport or go invisible. They have a huge home range and live in small groups. They seem to move at low light or dark of night, making it damn near impossible to see one. All of those things have to line up perfectly with you. It took me 48 years. I spend on average 100 plus days in a year in the mountains. It took decades for everything to line up to allow this to happen, and we were not even looking for one. I wish everyone could have an encounter like we did. Aside from one rock softball-sized thrown and hitting a tree next to our tent, it was all peaceful, relatively close and long enough with no obstruction, so we knew exactly what we were looking at. Incidentally, I have that rock in my office. It's cool to think one touched this very rock. Wow. That was, I really enjoyed that. Um, those are the encounters that, and the people telling that encounter are the ones that really kind of solidify it for me. Where they see one of these creatures and they accept it for what it may or may not be, and this person believes they are flesh and blood, a majestic animal hunting its forests. I could never imagine can you imagine the excitement he and his daughter had when they saw the first male, the large alpha male, and then saw the female with an infant Sasquatch? My God. It truly, truly amazes me how we can go our entire lives. I've only seen one creature thing, and I've been alive for 46 years, and since that day I have been looking day in and day out. We may never get the chance to. That's how elusive they are. That's how magical they are. And yes, they are dangerous, but so isn't a grizzly bear or a mountain lion, or if you go in a different country, a hyena or a real lion, a pride of lion. But when we see them in nature, what do we think? They are majestic. They are wild, beautiful. That's what I think these creatures are, all of them. It's strange and scary, yes, but still majestic and beautiful. What a really great experience. I'm so happy I was able to share that with you guys. Today's second experience. I work in forestry, and I had a bear that was clearly not afraid of me and did not want to leave me alone. I pulled into our campsite at around 1 a.m. with a truck and trailer. And it's just me out there. I got out and set up the 2 generators, one for the trailer so I didn't freeze to death, and one to keep the equipment we use warm so we can actually use it in the morning. And the batteries didn't die. I also got there late because I was having truck issues that I had no idea what the cause was. It just kept dying, and then it'd be fine, repeating over and over. I set up the generator for the trailer, and as I was getting the second out of the truck, I heard a branch snap loudly. I stop and listen, and I can hear more branches snapping and some rustling in the trees about 50 meters away into the trees. It's getting closer. I thought it was a person at first, so I yelled, "Who's there?" I got no reply. The noises come right up to the edge of the clearing I'm in, a circle, maybe 40 meters across, then stop, and I know whoever it is sitting there watching me. After 15 seconds of me listening hard, half in the truck, I see 2 eyes appear, and then they rise about 6 feet into the air. I could tell it was a bear by the way it moved, which was a relief because, for one, it wasn't a Dogman or a Sasquatch, and 2, because I knew there were only black bears around here, no grizzlies, but I didn't have anything to really defend myself, no bear spray or a gun or bear bangers. So I yelled at the bear, nothing. I hopped in the truck and pulled on the air horn. It didn't even move. I slowly walked over to the trailer, which was still hooked up to the truck, and grabbed a pot and pan and started smashing them together, all the while yelling. And it still didn't move at all, just stood there staring at me. It wasn't making any noises either, no huffing or pawing at the ground, like I knew bears to do when they were upset. But that didn't exactly put my mind at ease, considering this thing was clearly not afraid of me. Eventually, after about 15 minutes of making loud noises and doing nothing but staring at me, it finally dropped to the ground, turned, and started walking away. I waited for about 5 minutes since I had to set up the second generator, which I had to bring closer to the bear picture, a triangle. I was at a corner, the bear was at another, and where I needed to bring the generator was at the third. Right as I pulled the generator out of the truck, I heard branches snapping again, and it came back. It came back to the edge of the clearing and did the exact same thing, stood there staring at me, and wouldn't leave with all the noise I made. And again, after another 15 minutes of it sitting there motionless, it left. I quietly dragged the generator out, started it, ran back to the other generator, started that one, got in my trailer, shut the door, and watched out the window for a while at where this thing kept coming back. It never showed up again. Maybe it did after I went to bed, but there was no sign of it in the morning. So yeah, that's my bear, in quotations, that wouldn't F off experience. Not exactly the most insane thing that's ever happened to someone, but it was intensely disturbing knowing that this thing could have easily killed me, wasn't scared of me, didn't want to leave, remained perfectly still staring at me for such a long time, and that I couldn't do a thing about it because I had half set up the trailer already and could not leave quickly. And even if I could, there was no guarantee my truck was going to start, and I still had a job to do that required me leaving the safety of the truck and go closer to where the bear, in a way that would mean if it decided I was worth the trouble, it could get to me faster than I could get back to my truck. Also, I had a bear charge my truck down at top speed up north, then decided halfway to me that I was a lot bigger than it was and it wasn't worth it. Everybody knows how fast bears are. But there's a difference between reading the number 50 kilometers or even seeing a video and seeing it in person. An animal that big has no business moving that quickly. It's so unnatural. Also, heard plenty of very odd noises that night, and the feeling of being watched is nearly constant. I stay overnight in the middle of nowhere alone on a regular basis for my job, and it's very easy to psych yourself out late at night, alone, with no way to contact anyone except unreliable GPS text messaging and hours from anything resembling civilization. I've been doing this for years, and I'm still not used to it. Today's third experience. I was off-roading with some buddies back home in eastern New Brunswick on the Bay of Fundy, and this trail we do ends up on some water. And it's a site for an old ammunition depot from World War II. Now, we've been here many times during the day and sometimes at night. You can drive into and through this massive old structure, and up the hill is the admin building for said site from World War II. It's pretty far in the woods. At the very top of that hill are some grave markers from hundreds of years ago. We were told they're old pirate graves. We live on the coast. Not at all something I doubt being real. We were there one night in the big building having a fire, and we all saw and heard something quite large scramble up the side of the building and start running on top of it. Now there's a dozen of us. They're so clearly not just one person seeing something crazy. There's nothing in the woods of eastern Canada that should be able to climb as quickly as what we saw. Black bear maybe, but this thing basically ran up the side of this 4-storied structure and then ran across the top in moments. We got into our trucks and hightailed it out of there. On another occasion, we were exploring the admin building, which is 3 stories, concrete, had been abandoned since World War II. We go all the way to the top, nothing weird. Coming back, an entire room on the 2nd story is filled with lit candles, but no one around whatsoever. Again, we ran the F out of there. Now, this one, I will admit, was probably an elaborate prank since lots of people would go there and mess around, since it was a fun off-roading trail with some history at the end of it. But the animal climbing we saw still, to this day, mystifies me. Today's fourth terrifying experience. I live in northeastern America, in a pretty rural place with lots of hills, not too many neighbors, and a lot of forest. Well, I had headed out with my mom down our backyard, which is large and relatively clear for about 100 feet, then switches to woods. We got about 30 feet before the woods, and I caught sight of some eyes reflecting in my headlamp. They were a good 50 to 100 feet away, and I assumed they were just deer, but a few things convinced me that they might not be. Around where I live, deer will run away if you make enough noise. And we were talking pretty loudly, but the eyes were not moving. They kept staring directly at us, which is incredibly unlike the deer for this area. On top of that, the pair of eyes on the right were very low to the ground and very wide, too far apart to be a deer considering the distance. We stood for a moment remarking on them, and neither pair looked away. So, since we were spooked, we headed back to the house. Got my brother a machete, a bat, and a metal pole. I know, a little overkill, but our area has lots of scary stuff lately, and headed back down. I expected the eyes to be gone by that point, but nope. They were still there, in a slightly different spot than they had been, but not much further from where they were previously. They stared just as steadily as they had before, so we retreated back inside. Logical answer, deer, but the lack of running away, intent staring, and wide-set eyes feel like that option's ruled out. Another thought is wild dogs, but we don't usually have those in our area, and, once again, wide-set eyes. Possibly a black bear, but they are notoriously scared of people, especially up here. Also, there was no visible signs of anything as far as I could tell. I looked for marks on trees from climbing and saw none. There's a good amount of greenery covering the ground, so it's difficult to look for scat. There was also no signs of any animal lying on the ground. And tonight's second half's final terrifying experience. So a long while ago, myself and my very close friend got bored and decided to discover the nearby woods. We lived in a secluded area where we had thick forest around us for miles, and frankly, the rural area was boring. We had no one our age and no internet, so while we were sitting aimlessly, we decided to pack some stuff and wander into the woods. Now, my friend is a huge guy mainly because he's obsessed with bodybuilding, so it was a bit hard for someone to scare him. But as we walked in, we both had an eerie feeling that we were being watched. The mood was tense, and strangely, the woods were dead silent. No birds chirping, no wind, and no sound of animal or insect. Not even crickets. Approximately 20 minutes of nothing but scaring ourselves. We heard a bark. Where I live, we have stray dogs, both in the streets and the wooded areas. And the ones that are in the wooded areas are not as friendly as the ones in the streets because, well, they're mainly hungry. We stopped in our tracks and paid close attention to where the sound had come from. It was coming from our left and sounded pretty close. However, as the bark kept on, we both realized there was something off about it. I don't know how to put this, but it was almost like someone was trying to impersonate a dog, doing a very good job of it, but at the time, not really. Then we realized another odd thing about our supposed canine friend. The bark was repetitive, like it was playing on a speaker on repeat. My friend said that something is off, and he was genuinely creeped out. And I'm not going to lie, I was shaking. You might say it's quite natural to get creeped out in the woods in the middle of the night, in the middle of nowhere, but this was different. Every single fiber on our bodies wanted us to get the F out of there, but we were too scared to move. Finally, I told my friend to run, and quite reluctantly he obliged. We ran like our lives were depending on it, and still felt like that thing was chasing us. We were out of breath when we found our way back, and my buddy said he heard branches breaking as we were hauling out of there, and he was on the verge of crying hysterically out of pure fear. Strangest thing, however, is the fact that we both live in a country which has nothing to do with America, let alone Native American culture. What do you all think might be stalking and chasing us back there? And there you have it, folks. Tonight's bonus upload, which I do hope you all enjoyed as much as I enjoyed sharing it with you. I'd like to thank you all for supporting the channel. After all, it is your support that keeps the channel growing and going, and what gives folks like us a place and a chance to share our experiences and theories judgment-free, simply treated with the respect that we all deserve. Everyone, please stay safe, happy, healthy, and ever vigilant, keeping an eye on our children, pets, family, and friends. These creatures are real. They are out there and dangerous. Share this information with those you love and care about, and it may just help save their lives someday. Until next time, never stop asking questions, never stop searching for the truth, and God bless.